Hey, what's going on, guys? Mike Baker with ABO Outfitters. Today we got a super fun guest. It's James Vandenberg. He's from Southeast Iowa. Him and I go way back. We met through our wives, but probably known each other 8, 9, 10 years now. We've gotten to be even better buddies just through the outdoors and what we love to do. But this guy is a straight-up killer. He's grown up in Iowa. He has been a gigantic bow hunter. The guy has figured out the mature whitetails. He's going to run through some tips and tactics as far as patterning and killing those mature whitetails, but then also going to chat through the story about the great buck he killed last Saturday. As you can see, it's a giant. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot for joining us. Okay, we're officially live.
Biggs. Good to see you.
How does it feel?
Feels good. Feels good.
Well, good to see you. I mean, James Vandenberg here with a lot to say here today, but, basically we're going to start kind of from the beginning. We'll go back to just starting out super simple of introductory of who you are. I know this, but anyone who's listening would definitely, I think it's nice to set the stage because, you and I personally go back from just... As
far as our wives have allowed us to go back is essentially the answer to that question.
They've allowed us to become more than just husband friends, which has been nice of them.
That's...
But no, give us a little, lay the framework.
James Vandenberg, I grew up in Southeast Iowa. I actually kind of grew up everywhere. My dad was in the military, so I lived in Washington for a while and Georgia and Missouri, but ultimately high school and middle school in Southeast Iowa, home of very large whitetails. Me and Mike go back. How many years do we go back, Mike? When did I officially meet you?
I don't know. When was I wearing camel Crocs at your wedding?
Yeah, we might be going on like 8 years of officially knowing on each other, maybe 7 years of really broing out, and 6 years of like hunting and chugging whiskey together is a rough timeline. But I mean, grew up in Iowa, bow hunting. Have not killed very many things with a gun. I'm not anti-gun at all. You get more favorable seasons in Iowa if you bow hunt. So we bow hunted. That's what my dad did. And, that's a little bit of background on me.
Yeah, that's where growing up, I'm not sure you realize until a certain age that you were blessed to be in the whitetail mecca. No matter what, it's like you could just by accident go and sit from like October 20th to November 10th, and you could have a giant 200-inch whitetail come walking by you just on accident. But you guys obviously have dialed in a lot further than that, which we'll get to. But so you mentioned...
Yeah, I remember, just side note on that, like living like in Missouri, Washington, I remember my dad hunting so hard to like shoot like a spike with a bow or like a little 6-pointer. And then, you move to Southeast Iowa and it's slightly different.
A little bit. It's a little bit. Yeah. Well, obviously you guys have taken it to the next level. Your brother Elliot's a killer of himself, but you've definitely dialed it in. But like, again, we'll get to that. I kind of wanted to set the stage of what really got you into it. Obviously, it sounds like your dad was kind of the driver behind it. Yes. Ever since I can remember, like pictures of me just with a little bow in camo following my dad has kind of been the thing. And my dad really only bow hunted. And so that's what me and my brothers and sisters did. I mean, just from the very get-go, I shot my first deer as a third grader, and I shot it at night. It was like a big doe, like 18 yards, which in third grade wasn't a chip shot, but it was pretty dang close. And we didn't find her that night. I was super depressed. And the next day, my dad came and got me out of school like at 10 a.m. because he kept looking and he found her. And from then on, I was just hooked, basically bow hunting anything and everything. And that's expanded the older I've got. Yeah, well, I mean, back to kind of when we met, I remember just being like, I had like a man crush, I had always like wanted to, I was never into, growing up, around here, I just wasn't, I wasn't super into the bow hunting world. And then, kind of had gotten into it a little bit at a time. But
being that you were super into it and knew a ton about bow hunting and had killed all these animals with a bow, it was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even fathom it, because it was still, deer hunting was a rush with a gun growing up, and yet I couldn't even believe, like, wait, what? Like 15 yards in front of you? That seems nuts, but.
Dude, I'm just a natural born salesman. Got you into it.
That's
you're,
right.
You're one of like 5 or 6 people. There's 5 or 6 people. You were not as cold turkey as the other 4 or 5. But
Yeah.
I do remember like meeting you, and it's like walleye, Lake of the Woods, and pounding pheasants. Like that's what you did.
Yeah.
And I remember how intrigued you were. And would you buy this bow? And you got that bow from your coworker, boss, something.
Yeah. Yep. I was just going to give him a little shout out, because without him, I still might have been sitting on the sidelines, not pulling the trigger on buying something.
Yeah. And then fast forward, and you've been to Iowa now, and we've killed elk together. And, yeah. You've had an exponential learning curve.
Yeah.
Which is only done by trial and error.
There's
by
no
the way.
doubt. There's no doubt. No matter how old you are, no matter how much you've hunted, even deer specifically, there's no replication of getting good at killing something with a bow. It just isn't.
Yeah.
You have to mess it up. You have to figure out, like, well, when do I draw my bow? When do I, it's just, there's no way. I remember the first 2 or 3 years, it just one after the other, drawing at the wrong time, deer's gone. It's like, oh my God, what? This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different beast, but that's what attracts us to it so much.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, and that's kind of, so right now we're kind of on the eve of Minnesota gun opener, and that just kind of in and of itself is kind of a Minnesota holiday, so to speak, but it's so different, being that, like, guys literally just look forward to those 2 days a year to hunt. Saturday, Sunday, they come up, or even are from around town here, and they hunt local land, and they get out for their 2 days. They, whatever, brown and down, and they shoot it with a rifle, and they're back on their way, which is awesome. It's great that they, have a chance to hunt, but at the same time, it's like, going to the bow hunting world, you're going to go out, you're going to see deer possibly, or you're going to see nothing. But even if you do, you have opportunities. It doesn't always work out anywhere near a high percentage of the time. But anyways, so we kind of talked about the bow hunting world growing up, getting into it, childhood. But I also, a big factor of your life has been football and sports. So I definitely wanted to jump into that side of the world.
Sports, I mean, growing up were a really big deal. Not necessarily anything. It was just something I was into. And I was the kid that played 6 sports year round. I mean, I just one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And ultimately I had an opportunity to be on a really good high school football team and have a lot of success. And then got the opportunity to go on and play in college at the University of Iowa. I played quarterback, and then post-college had a cup of coffee, so to speak, in the NFL and the Minnesota Vikings, and basically got fired and hired for about 1.5 years of my life, and then have since lost weight and felt not as beat up. But no, football was a big part. I've met so many great people through football and so many awesome experiences. The more serious football gets, though, the more it eats into your fall. So there was definitely a large stint of my life there to where hunting, I mean, was like the one bye week or the one bye weekend. And that's certainly something post-football that's been nice to have a little bit more time, but wouldn't change it for the world. A lot of great experiences, a lot of great people, and you learn a lot of great lessons. But I like being married and having kids and having more flexibility in the fall too. So positives and negatives to everything in life, and that certainly comes with football as well.
100%. Yeah. The sports world, it kind of translates to a lot of things in life. Just the winning and losing and working with the team and all that kind of stuff that, it sounds so cliched, but you look back on your time in sports and athletics, and man, it couldn't be more true. So,
it's all related. It's all related. The people that have success in sports, and it doesn't have to be sports, but sports are an easy one to take a look at. But it's all related to how most likely, you're going to handle your job and your marriage being a dad and bow hunting, and I mean, whatever it is, it's all related. And I was fortunate to play with a lot of really good people that happen to be good at sports too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think the biggest thing I would assume as a college athlete is just like balancing the college schedule, college life, and then athletics on top of it. I mean, that's got to be. And you were certainly a more of a standout student than the majority of people on your team. So I can't imagine that's maybe talk about like the little bits of like sticking to a schedule and being pretty strict about that kind of stuff of just being dialed in on what you're going to do and kind of having a plan.
Yeah. No, I think there's something to be said on like trying to do something and do it the right way. And ultimately there's always things you can't control, but doing all the things that you can control, the little things, so to speak. My grandpa used to tell me two things all the time. One, patience and perseverance pays off every time. It's like my favorite saying of all time. And then ultimately, let's do all the little things and the big things take care of themselves. And so it's go to class, it's study, and it's work on your fundamentals. It's all that stuff. But yeah, ultimately to play college sports at that level, the Division I level, and to try to not do underwater basket weaving, it just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that means you give up other things. I drank less beers probably than the average student. That's okay.
Certainly than a business major at UND.
I'm trying to catch back up now. It's something that, I like thinking that if you're going to do any of this stuff, try doing it the right way. And that was certainly how I tried approaching sports. And I got to a point to where, talent and opportunity, it's like it runs out everywhere at some point for people. And some people that's high school, and some people that's college, and some people that's in the NFL. And so a lot of good principles though. And there's certainly things I miss, but having more access to hunt in the fall is something I now enjoy.
Yeah, the flexibility is there for sure. Well, you told me plenty of stories throughout college, but one that kind of stuck out was regarding Mark Ingram and getting recruited and your first initial recruiting visit to Iowa. I love the inside stories. Like that's the kind of stuff that, the games are cool, sure, but at the end of the day, like getting to know people and their personalities and hearing some stories is awesome. So,
I've met a lot of, famous people, quote unquote. Mark Ingram was probably the first, and he wasn't famous at the time, and I certainly wasn't. We were both scrawny. Well, he wasn't very scrawny.
No.
High school juniors or seniors, I don't even know. We were on official visits together at Iowa, though, and he left that visit telling me he was coming to Iowa for sure. And then through a flurry of activity and some things that happened maybe off the books, he ended up going to Alabama. And ultimately, I think financially that was a good decision for him.
Yeah.
Adam Thielen was my roommate with the Vikings. He was a tryout guy that, it's like 99.9% of people go to the tryout and don't make it. Adam Thielen was like the one guy from the tryout they kept. And he became my roommate. And ultimately, obviously, Adam is an incredible guy, incredible player, deserves everything. And he's still there, and I'm not there. But we were roommates for 5-6 months there through camp, through OTAs, played a lot of golf together. His wife was great. We went and had family, like at her family's house. And
that's cool.
A lot of good people. But for all the Minnesotans out there, Adam is a hell of a golfer, which I think is very well known now, but he was a hell of a golfer then. And it was pretty clear to see that, God, like they don't keep him. They're doing the wrong thing because that guy catches everything and he just knows how to get open. As a quarterback, like who's easy to throw to.
Yeah.
And Adam Thielen from day one, I don't care where he came from, was really easy to throw to.
Yeah, well, it's like anything. There's like guys that are really good at just like running routes, but then there's also guys that are just naturally, they just kind of get it from all perspectives and they can just put it together on the football field. No different in hockey, no different, maybe it's a good segue to no different in bow hunting. There's plenty of people that can sit and shoot a super tight group out to 100 yards, but then, let's maybe say 50, but either way, point being is that when it comes crunch time, like, is there people that can just straight up block everything else out, make it work,
figure it out and
just get it done and kill an animal? Like, especially elk hunting, you just find a way to do it, get it done. It's not, it might not be pretty. Bow hunting's not pretty. That's the way it is, but you just find a way to get it done. Yeah, I mean, I guess segueing into more of the hunting specifics, you run a social media brand and, kind of a more of a lifestyle type hunting focused, athletics driven antler athlete brand. So do you want to speak on that at all?
Antler athlete. Yeah, no, that was something that just was kind of born from, it was a name created by me, but ultimately when I was in college, I killed a really big deer. The biggest deer I've ever killed, actually, quite frankly, on a bye week. Then the next year, I killed a bear going into my senior year. And there was a little bit of I don't want to say backlash, but there was a little bit of backlash. And so post-college, I just thought, all of my personal page, but then all my hunting stuff, because I love sending out a massive group text, I'll just do it through this channel. And that became Antler Athlete. And I basically did that with a good friend who was a lot more famous in athletics than me, Brent Metcalf. He's a national champion wrestler. And so we both had this passion for filming and pictures and bow hunting. And that's obviously morphed over the years, but that's where it started. We've both had a lot more kids since we started that. So the filming is taking a hit because time is of the essence. But yeah, something that we still have a lot of fun with. And we've kind of done the birth of Antler Athlete kind of goes like this. I had started Antler Athlete without Brent, but was really looking for somebody to do it with. Cause I like going with people. If I don't get to take the shot, that's okay. I like going and hunting with people.
Yep.
And so anyway, I started Antler Athlete, had done it for a year, but the workload was already I want to have somebody to share this with. I want somebody else to be hunting. And I did this charity every year, and Brent was there. And the charity was, I was a celebrity, quote unquote, very loose term, but I was a celebrity at this pheasant charity hunt, and mostly football guys that were playing in the NFL at the time. And then you got Brent, who was a celebrity there, and he's this 5'4" cauliflower-eared dude that could just fold any of us up into a pretzel.
Yeah.
But he didn't know anybody, and I knew he hunted a bunch, and so I just went up and, hey, you're a turkey slayer, I know you filmed some stuff, and we just kind of hit it off. And we set it up to go turkey hunt a month later together. And ultimately we had this turkey hunt, which is not normally how it goes, but we walked 5 miles, which is not normal, chasing gobblers. And he ultimately reaped one at 2 yards with the best footage we'll ever get turkey hunting ever. And that was kind of the birth of us kind of filming together. And now, like I said, we've had a lot more kids, and we bought a farm together, and we've done a lot of stuff since then. Killed an elk together. He was there when I killed my biggest elk to date. That's, the Antler Athlete brand is that. It just, the actual filming of it has been lagging by a lot. We started that. He had 1 kid. I had 0. He now has 4 kids. I have 2. And so just the total time allotment has been tough. But yeah.
Yeah. You definitely have to, pick and choose wisely once you, throw kids into the mix, and schedules and dropping off at daycare, and wives working, and man, it's hard. It's hard for sure. Not to mention your own personal work schedule. So it gets tight for sure.
Filming increases the difficulty of everything.
Yep.
It just makes it. And I didn't like that as the time got crunched, it's just this pressure to have to film. And all of a sudden that kind of was robbing a little bit of the stuff I previously liked about hunting. And so we're trying to find that balance now of what we want to do and what we don't want to do. But having a property that's more controlled by us makes it a lot easier again. So we've talked about what that'll enable here in the future. But all good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, some of the films were awesome. The one was a winner of the Kuyu Film Festival. I think that's what it was called. But
yeah.
And then the other one was a part of the full draw. So, that's that's legit. That's actually legit stuff. And so, but yeah, I mean, it'll be super cool to see. I know that with that property, possible couple different hunts possible in the future, late season, working specifically with us. But I mean, it just isn't simply checking out the Instagram page and all the different videos. You guys see and kill big deer, even if you're not killing them, you're able to film them. It's pretty awesome. So that maybe just will be a good natural transition to kind of some your own personal tactics, tips for just patterning giant whitetails, not just going out and killing any deer. Like if you're going to go out and try to kill and pattern an older class, mature whitetail, starting at the beginning of the year, early season through late season, like what kind of things are you looking at to get that done?
I think the first thing, and you corrected yourself there, but I would encourage people to you're trying to hunt a mature whitetail, not a giant whitetail. Because even here in Iowa, there are farms, it's kind of like elk hunting. I mean, there's places where a herd bull is 360, and there are places that no matter what, the herd bull is 250. And that is even county to county, farm to farm within Iowa. And that is certainly different in South Dakota. I mean, a 5.5-year-old deer in South Dakota is going to generally look different than a 5.5-year-old deer in Iowa. And that's just genetics. But hunting mature whitetail, I mean, arguably, I would say it's the hardest thing to do. Now, there's certainly been people that filming-wise have created a way to do it consistently, but that has involved a lot of money. I'll tell you that. If you pay enough and you own enough ground, and you can hunt every single day, and that's no knock on them. But I mean, a whitetail's senses, I mean, nose, eyes, ears, they don't walk around in the daylight ever. I mean, ever. It's just, they're hard. It's really hard. My dad used to go through a booking service, just like ABO, growing up. And I remember the guy used to always tell him, the one thing that is the hardest to guarantee any client on is a big whitetail. It's the absolute hardest. Because you just don't know. They're just not on their feet in daylight that much. So, I mean, I think that's point number one with wherever you're hunting. If you want to kill a big deer, you better be in a place, and this some people can't control, but it's you just can't be messing around on that ground, because big whitetails don't come out in daylight where they get messed with a lot. Four-wheelers, hiking, jogging, just pheasant hunting, that's all negatives. Those are all negatives. If that's happening where you whitetail hunt, doesn't mean you can't kill a mature deer, but it means that mature deer, whatever small daylight window they would normally come out in, it's even less. It's just, you want those deer to just basically be unbothered, which is hard in today's world. It's hard. But I mean, we like to really, we believe in not bumping them. Cellular cameras, we've even gone to all of the cellular cameras. That's helped us both because we have time and kid problems. So it's helped on that end, but it's ultimately we have 8 cameras out there covering a large chunk of ground that we don't ever have to go walk on. And we strap battery packs so those suckers don't run out of batteries. We've noticed that has changed just how the deer move, just because they're not getting pressure all summer. I think I'll probably have you ask more pointed questions, but we generally follow the same thing that I would say the Drurys and the Lacoste. Not very much pressure. We're trying to establish good food sources, because in an area where you've got a lot of good cover, you kind of got to get them to one area. And we have a lot of good cover. So getting them into one spot is kind of the hard spot. And that can be a food source if you do a good job. And then ultimately, we can't hunt 50 days in a row. People who do this professionally can. So really allocating our time to October 22nd to November 10th. With everything being from October 22nd to November 1st being a little bit more of pattern hunting, let's call it, traditional movement, just you have a chance to catch them on their feet in daylight. And then November 1st to 10th being things just break open and they're going to be on their feet
most of the day, and it isn't necessarily just to go hit a food source. So that's kind of how ultimately I think late season is one of the best times to kill a mature buck, but neither of us really are big into the late season thing, and our wives kind of allocate time. We want to take the time allocated from our wives to the rut versus the late season. Yep. But I think late season can be a really good hunt.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay. So I guess there's a lot of stuff that you were kind of touching on there. So let's just say, all right. So then when do you guys leave cameras out year round, or when do you start putting those in?
Yeah, good question. So we in general put them up, I would say the end of July. Rack formation here in Iowa is, getting fully formed by the end of July, first week of August, second week of August. So I don't really mess with them until their rack's somewhat grown. I want to preserve batteries and cards and so on and so forth. Yep. Once again, I'm a little bit of a stickler on time and money, but basically we put them out first week of August. They all get switched to scrapes and or more tree stand locations come the end of September.
Okay.
That stays the same all the way until January. Once season's over, we'll put out feeders, feed, and ultimately that's to attract, we want to find sheds. But we'll keep cameras out on those piles post-season just to kind of see what shows up post-season, and that kind of helps us shed hunt. And then by the time we shed hunting, let's just call it March, late April or late February, we pull all of our cameras, tune them up, re-battery, all that stuff, get them out of the elements until that following July. So that's kind of how we're running it now. We're running majority cell cams, but I've got some non-cell cams that we're basically we're not going to check. It's going to be just more inventory when we look at the end of the year, like, was there something that we missed or a better picture of something we might have only seen on a cell cam once type of deal.
Yep. And then those ones, do you ever, the non-cell cameras, do you pull those on the way to the stand and then check them while you're sitting there, or?
If we walk by them, we'll pull them. Otherwise, we kind of intimate, like, we don't go out of our way, no matter what, to walk by them. So I can just think off the top of my head, there's 1 or 2 we've already pulled. We've got like 6 of those out. There's 2 or 3 that I don't think we'll pull at all until we're done, which is okay. We're okay with that.
Yeah. I guess the next thing that from your original description of kind of what you guys look at, end of October being more of a patternable time to kill mature deer. So like when you're saying like, well, I've only got so much time, I know this stretch of days could be good for, say, a mature deer to be up checking a scrape or a doe bedding area or something. What kind of things do you look at to be like, oh, cripes, it's Thursday, I'm going? Like, what kind of things is that?
Yeah, I think, just in general, any daylight picture you get, you just don't get daylight pictures in early October. If you do, it's completely rare. And the closer you get to November in Iowa, this is different everywhere else on the actual dates, but the closer you get to November in Iowa, the more they start creeping towards daylight. And we kind of look at it in 2 ways. 1, on a scrape that's in a more secluded area, or 2, the closer you get to November, they might come out into a food source. Those last couple of days of October, really the 25th on, they might come out into a food source where 10 or 15 does are going to be, just to kind of see if there's a whiff, so to speak, of the rut. And so any day, if we saw one on a food source in daylight and or a scrape in daylight, we would go there the next night and or morning. I would say, like, in general, that last week of October, afternoons are better for us. But really the trigger on get in there is a shooter, a 5.5-year-old deer that we've kind of deemed as a shooter mature buck. If he shows up in daylight, it's time to go try to sit a time or 2, because a lot of times they'll do it for more than 1 day. All of like the really, really serious people that like hunt on TV, Lukoski's are probably the best example. They are really, really good at killing big deer. And I would argue, if you look back, they kill all their big deer the last week of October,
because come November, they become subject to complete randomness, which is good for the everyday hunter. We need a little help. They don't like that. They want to know that they're just coming into their food source in daylight. So daylight pictures are big. That's the trigger for us.
Yeah. And then as far as like weather, and that's obviously wind is a number one, there's no doubt, but other things like, do you pay attention to, pressure changes and moon phases and all these things you hear about, people talk about, and that, how much stock do you put in those sorts of things?
I put stock in them, but not as much. I will say this. So like I used to have the Drurys have an app,
Deercast,
I think it's called. It was free. As soon as they made me pay for it, I don't have it. Brent pays for one of those though. And it basically ranks the day like 0 to 100%. There's no doubt pressure, temperature, they have a huge role. And every time those things say that it's a good day to hunt, our cameras light up. That doesn't mean that the big deer shows up in daylight though. So that's still the trump card on everything. Like a 5.5-year-old deer in daylight is the ultimate thing we watch. But you get high pressure systems, or in general, I can just look at my weather app and know. And I would describe it as this. When I see, let's just say 60s, 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 and then all of a sudden the next day is going to be 49.
Yeah.
That transition, which I would argue the best time to hunt isn't the 49 day, it's that last afternoon before it's going to start changing really quick that night. The deer sense the pressure, the change before it ever gets there. So, and that's probably where the pressure comes in. But the pressure is changing ahead of the temperature. And so if you just look at your phone and you look at those big changes, like I said, the 60, 60, 60, and then the high 40, or the 70, 70, 70, 50, or the 40, 40, 40, 20, whatever it is, that change, hunting in front of that change undoubtedly causes a lot of movement. And then the closer you get to November for us is the better chance that that's a big buck that's going to get up.
I agree. That's at least in my experience, that's seemed to make a huge difference. I guess next thing, obviously schedules can play a factor in it, but the all day sit. What do you typically do on those kinds of, on those days? Where you see that and you do have it all day. Do you, no matter what, you're staying in the same spot, you same stand, or do you move, or what?
Yeah,
what do you do?
I think strategies definitely change once a doe's in heat. So I'd say leading up to a doe being in heat, we're basically hunting the fringes and we're hunting food plots or a scrape. We're just on the outside looking in. Once it seems like the rut's kicked off, we tend to just dive into where we know are going to be travel corridors, which normally you wouldn't want to go deep in there. But we do go in. It means you got to, access gets a little shakier, but ultimately we're trying to hunt movement. Just general corridors that these bucks are going to cruise in between bedding areas is kind of like our favorite. Several spots, we know there's 2 different beds. You get in between them, and that's where those bucks really go back and forth. But, as far as the all-day sit, leading up to that first doe coming in heat, I'd say the all-day sit's kind of useless. Your activity is really going to be the last hour and the first hour. Once you get to the rut kicking off, it can happen at any time. And I would say I actually even prefer, not the first hour or the last hour. I prefer the time in between there. I remember somebody did an experiment. They called it the working man's hours. Drop your kids off at daycare at 8, hunt till 3 o'clock, and pick your kids up from daycare. I think that is a really, really good time to hunt during the rut. I would probably prefer that to just saying I can hunt the first 2 hours or the last 2 hours. I've killed a lot of deer, and I know you have too. Hunting with me, I think you killed yours at 1.
Yeah.
I've killed a lot of deer.
Killed a couple in South Dakota like that.
Between 9 and noon. 9 and noon is a good time.
Like they teach you in driver's ed, 10 to 2. 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. But the buck I killed in Iowa, that's exactly what happened. It had gotten super cold, north wind. Finally could pop into that one stand.
You went to your truck to de-thaw.
I did. It was freezing cold.
I was muster up the courage to stay sitting.
It's I had to make a cup of coffee, give myself a little pep talk, and then threw on another layer and just walked straight back to the stand. And honestly, an hour later, that deer came walking right down the trail. But yeah, anyways, I there was a couple in South Dakota that have done the same sort of thing where they, or possibly even out chasing all night long. And then they're exhausted and they go lay down for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then that internal drive just seems like it takes over. And then they just get up at 10, 11, 12, and they go and search and check those bedding areas again. So, yeah, I mean, I think if people if you can sit all day long, do it.
Do it. I mean, why not? I think why those deer up on their feet though? Like at night, all the does are on their feet and they're spread out. They're at food sources, but they're spread out. The does, even during the rut, want to go bed down. The bucks don't. And so, I mean, it almost like concentrates the does. And that's why getting in between those spots where the does are going to be bedded, bucks are going to make their way there.
Yep.
Hunting during the rut here enough, like you're gonna watch, it's like a freaking beehive. Like you're gonna watch a buck run into an area and just start chasing 5 or 6 does, and that tends to happen more in the middle of the day. So that's what I've seen.
Yep. Okay, so then transitioning to kind of the quote unquote late season, it's a little bit more straightforward. Where at that point, weather's probably gotten a little colder.
Yeah,
they need to recover. And they need food. But beyond that, I mean, is there anything that you guys are looking for and the way you're hunting changes more than just simply food? Or is that just kind of the mainstay?
Not really. So how Iowa works is we get bow season in November. It ends in December. They do 2 shotgun seasons. Most people in Iowa are driving during that time. And then late muzzle opens up around Christmas and goes till the 10th. And we really don't do any of the shotgun stuff. So if we're going to hunt late, it's late muzzle. And that purely becomes a temperature and food equation. Those deer really don't want to be out in daylight at that time. But if it gets cold enough, they will be out in daylight.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you start getting those temperatures really low, they will get up and go out in daylight. But ultimately, you got to be where there's food. I mean, that time of year, it's like you want to see a bunch of deer because that means there's food wherever that bunch of deer is. So find a spot or keep a food source available and then literally concentrate. I mean, don't hunt when it's 50 degrees. Wait until it does. I mean, the high is 27. Those are the nights you're going to see a lot of deer pile in during daylight. That's what's important. All those deer are going to be there during the night. But once again, in the daylight, getting that big buck on his feet is going to take cold temperatures.
Yep. That seems like, I would be no different if it was me. You get up and move your body.
Efficient. I mean, we don't have unlimited time and we want to stay married. So I say all of this on in general, like hunt every day, but late season, look at your weather app. Once again, look at that. Hey, it's been 40, 40, 40. And then all of a sudden it goes to 28. It's like those couple days and the day leading up to that are when I'm going to take off work and potentially piss my wife off.
Yeah, exactly. That's when
calculated risk. That's what we're doing.
The risk reward.
Calculated risk.
Oh, funny. Well, so that's all a lot of great tactics, and I guess you just on my intro. I showed I pulled up a picture of your buck you just killed last Saturday, and I kind of wanted to hear your story on that and just walk through kind of the same sort of thing, whether it was tactics or what made you jump in and sit that stand at that time. And then, obviously the shot and kill and all the fun stuff.
Yeah. No, that buck, it was a buck we have a lot of history with. Last year we had hundreds of pictures of that deer. This year he showed up again and we have hundreds of pictures. And he really started going daylight like the 25th or 6th. Our property is majority cover. So we tend to have a lot of bedding on our property. And he started just getting up and hitting some of the scrapes right there before dark. He'd be checking them. And then we'd see him out on the food sources in the dark. But he was getting up enough to where I went back in there after him, had an encounter previous to the night I killed him. And it just didn't work. He didn't come on the right trail. Saw him, thought he was going to come right to me, and he ultimately didn't. Got back in there. We're really, until the rut breaks open, we are super wind aware. We don't ever hunt anywhere
that we can't walk into without spooking deer, or the wind's not going to spook deer. And so I really couldn't get back in there until we had this hard, west wind, and got back in there like at 2:00. It gets dark at 6:30. And I'm way back, I'm in the bedding area. Like we kind of went into the hornet's nest because this deer was on his feet so much, and got in and immediately kind of saw deer just milling around on their feet. Sat there for about an hour, and lo and behold, I looked to my left and just popped out of the brush. This deer is right there, 20, 25 yards. The wind is perfect. Perfect. And he's about to come on a trail that's going to go right underneath me. It's a brand new stand we've hung. It's almost like too close to the trail, to be honest. So I was already thinking, like, I'm going to draw right now. He's at 25 yards, thinking I'm going to shoot him at like 6, and it's going to be quartering to me a little bit. I draw, and ultimately he has no idea I'm there. But instead of taking the trail that came to me, he started going kind of diagonal away from me. So I'm at full draw, and I got no shot at 20, 25. Now I'm like looking through the woods, like, where can I shoot him at? And I found this hole that if I stood up, I like to sit shooting down, or shoot sitting down.
I followed it.
And so I stood up, and over this brush, I kind of had a shot, and I had ranged where that was, this opening. It was like at 41 yards. So ultimately I hold it, full draw for maybe a minute. He's just moseying through the woods. He wasn't doing any chasing. He had just clearly just got on his feet, and he started to do a little lap, probably going to hit the scrape on the other side of where I was at, where I couldn't hunt because of the wind, and just start seeing where the does were at. And ultimately 41, I grunted, stopped him. He turned around, and I just 12 ringed him. He ran maybe 60 or 70 yards. Found him. He was a little bit bigger on the ground than I think we thought he was. He's a little bit longer, a little bit heavier. Ultimately, he's a little bit younger than we thought, too. We're trying to the deer make really big jumps between 3.5, 4.5, 4.5, 5.5. And I've shot a lot of 4.5-year-old deer. Ultimately, we're trying to get to a 5.5-year-old deer, and this deer is only 4.5. So like a tinge of regret there, but ultimately, like, I'm not trying to get in the habit of passing 170-inch deer. Like, that is not me. I'm not there.
Well, it just goes back to the risk reward, where you only got so much time. 170 plus inch deer is walking a trail, and oh my gosh, he's kind of young. I better let him. No way. Yeah. That's just
ultimately, I hope we get to a point where I can pass that deer, but we are not.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a heck of a deer, man.
He got a broadhead at 41 yards, and bam. That was it. I'm done. I haven't tagged out on a deer in October since high school, I bet. Because ultimately time has been crunched, and you get the best opportunity of randomness in November. And so I've killed a lot of deer the 1st to the 20th, and I killed this one on the 30th, the day before Halloween. And super pumped, great deer. And ultimately, it was, once again, it was the daylight pictures that triggered us. And he went daylight like 4 days before, but then he just kind of stayed daylight. And so he became pretty killable. And that's a little bit, I would say, rare. Big mature deer, they just don't get up in daylight very much. That's just the facts. We also have a cornfield that borders us that's standing. It's 80 acres. And that is a huge killer, just a huge killer, because deer get out there and stay out there and chase out there, and you just can't hunt it. It's not even our ground, and there's no way to hunt it anyway. So, we got to take the opportunities we get. And, October 30th, I'm done. Yeah,
man, that's cool. That's, heck of a deer. Absolutely smoked him, and that's awesome. I couldn't even believe it. I saw the story on Instagram, and I instantly just texted you like, whoa, what? No way. It was so sweet. Okay. So obviously this worked out early, but you mentioned most of your deer you've killed between the 1st and the 20th. If you, let's just say you have like a stretch of 4 or 5 days only.
Yeah.
When are you hunting? Is it hunting the end of October, or is it hunting early November?
Gosh, depends what my spot is. And you know this because like when you came here and hunted, like at that time, my spots were primarily rut corridors. And so I would say, I mean, the 2nd through the 6th, the 1st through the 5th, the 5th through the 10th, anytime you get 5 days off between November 1st and November 15th, whatever that is. I mean, like timber rut corridors is what I had. If I had a really good food plot and deer came to it a lot and my mature deer was showing up there in dark, that last week of October can be really good.
Yep.
So I think it varies on how your farm's set up. I've been skewed the last 5-8 years. I haven't had food sources, so I'm hunting them in between the food sources, and I'd say that's more of a November activity.
Yep. Well, there you go, folks. I mean, if you're lucky enough to draw a tag in Iowa, choose wisely. But I mean, I think that 1st to the 5th or 7th, and
if you blindfolded me and you're coming here and you don't know, come November 1st through the 15th, anytime in there. It helps to have some random luck on your side.
Yep.
And by that time, I mean, you're going to get random bucks covering a lot of ground. And so I would always say that's the truly your best opportunity. But like I said, I think the people who really have it figured out, they kill all their deer the last week of October.
Yep. Yeah. I think, I mean, there's got to be. It's just to constantly pattern them and kill them, that's probably the cards are stacked more in your favor there. But, well, so obviously there's reasons why you've killed good deer, great deer. Let's be honest. I mean, they're great deer over, the consistent year after year after year. Yeah, sure. Is it good ground with good deer? Yeah. But at the same time, it's always been different ground, and you've consistently found a way to do it. Anybody can do it once, but people that actually know what they're doing and put real thought and effort into it, there's a reason why you consistently kill. So that's like I was saying before we recorded. Most of the people that would more than likely listen are going to be whitetail people. So I think you can really pick a lot out of there. But one thing too is you've not only figured that stuff out, you figured out the Western world. You've gone on a bunch of different hunts, and this year, I mean, by the end of October, you've been a part of an antelope that you've killed, a great mule deer, and now a great whitetail. So maybe just touch on some sweet hunts you've done on the Western world and then what you kind of look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, anymore, elk hunting is just the best. And I know me and you kind of universally agree on that. And if you made me choose one, I get 7 days to hunt, I'm probably choosing elk over anything. But I've been, to various states elk hunting. This year, burned some antelope points, and then helped my brother who lives in Wyoming fill his mule deer tag. Nothing does it quite for me like elk. I know a lot of people say that about mule deer too, but elk is what does it to me. I love the grind. I love how big they are. It's so hard. I mean, it's so hard. It's so much different than whitetail hunting. I mean, obviously complete opposite. But it's fun. Right now I've got my brother and my dad both live out west, so I can go and get to see them and elk hunt. But I mean, elk hunting, my advice to anybody elk hunting, especially people that are more, let's just call it Midwest or Eastern, and you want to go elk hunt, like the number one rule in elk hunting, okay? I don't care if you're in the greatest shape ever, if you're a fatty Busch Light drink, okay? We all tend to kind of have a similar tolerance to where we can get to, and the elk know that. And they are always, when you get to the point of like whenever somebody says like, man, we wouldn't want to kill one much further than this, you need to just look up and look at the next furthest place you can see of like, no, let's not go there. Yeah. That is where the elk are at every single time. Like
there's the steepest shale rock ridge that if you sneak in, it's going to make noise.
They know. Like
they're good.
As soon as somebody starts tapping out, look at the next thing you'd have to go up and down and just point to it, because that's where they're actually going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I've hunted in New Mexico and Colorado and Wyoming and Montana. It's universally true. I've only kind of done the do-it-yourself public land stuff, but it's always further and crappier then you want to go.
Yeah.
Period.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It is.
yeah, that's what makes it awesome. I had a couple years in a row where I didn't even draw my bow in Montana, and it's like you get home and you're instantly planning the next trip, and it's just unlike anything else. And you can, I mean, looking back, you probably could have just done a much less expensive camping trip in the summertime, but at the same time, you're not hearing the bugles in the morning and chasing elk, and it's just unlike anything else, man. It's super fun.
Us waking up to snow. And,
man.
Yeah.
That storm we slept through was a joke.
Is as hardcore as it gets. Like, that guy's killed more elk by himself in grizzly country.
Guys.
And it's like, he didn't get out of the tent that morning because there was so much snow. And me and you were just like, well, we get less days than him, so we better go. And we saw the most elk that morning, and ultimately you killed that morning. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, like, I mean, originally you talked about sports, but I mean, it's just like, you're going to go try to do it right. And maybe that means you can only do it right for 3 or 4 days. Don't try doing it for 10 days then, because you will get broken. Like, you'll get broken.
Yeah, and I think the group that you go hunt with is just as important. It's
huge.
Because inevitably, there's going to be the point where, like, you're a little bit worn out, and then all of a sudden you get to be a lot worn out, and then you get close and you just F it up for some reason, and, like, frustrations can just be high. And it's just one of those trips that they can, and they will be probably. And so then if you have people that are like, start whining and start pouting and being a cancer of the group, I mean, it just goes south in a hurry. So
because it's so, like, at that point when it's going bad, it's like one person's like, hey, like, let's go back to the truck. Like, screw. I mean, let's take it. I mean, it's just, oh yeah, let's do it.
You guys want to go back and shower?
Yeah, you need to have those. You need to have those people that are just always glass half full.
Yeah.
And the people that are just willing to grind.
Let's just go. I don't care. My legs are gonna cramp, but.
It's the same thing with whitetails, though. Like, having you here, and it's like, Mike, you're here for 4 days, 5 days. You need to sit all day.
Yeah.
Like, all day. Like, it's going to suck.
Yep.
The day you killed your buck, it was like 28 degrees and blowing.
It was just chucking in my face.
Taking a north wind in the face all day. Like, but ultimately, if you want to kill something, like, that's the story that you don't get to see with the picture.
Right.
Time and perseverance. Like, that's what it takes.
That's what, patience and perseverance, just like your grandpa said.
Amen. That's what it takes.
Yep. Well, hey, I know you got to get running. I don't want to take a ton more time, but dude, that's probably a great spot to kind of wrap things up, and a lot of good info there. And I mean, cripe's sake, it's fun to hear different ways different people do things, but somebody in terms of hunting that I respect the hell out of, and what you have to say as an opinion, that's what I just love to hear. And I'm glad that you were able to jump on and share some of that, and we're willing to do it, take an hour and just sit down.
No, I love the conversation. And there's so many strategies, so many strategies, so many things. I mean, ultimately though, what we just said, I mean, it's time. And one thing we didn't touch on, and we're not going to go on this tangent now, but I mean, you need to shoot your bow all year, because you get one chance at that 170-inch deer or that 300-inch bull, like, one chance, period. Like, there are rare chances. Like, don't squander it by not having practice enough to where you miss or wound or. I mean, shoot your bow to where you can execute, because the chances when you get, I mean, they just don't come very often. And the people that execute on a high percentage of time are the people that become famous. Like, it's Cameron Haynes. Like, that guy doesn't miss.
No, he smokes.
He doesn't miss a day of shooting his bow either. So it's just, concentrate on the things you can control, and then ultimately get your ass out there to where you get the chance of having a chance. And then there's a little bit of luck. Nobody wants to admit it, but there's luck. There's luck that deer walked out in front of me the other day, and there's luck that elk. I mean, it's just, there's a little luck factor, but you got to be there and you got to execute to take advantage of the luck.
100%. Yeah, I agree. The other thing too, you're a bow nut. You know a heck of a lot about restringing bows, or like setting them up in a vise, and arrows and broadheads and all these little things. So I think that would be an awesome time to get you back on and talk through some of that stuff. So
We can talk gear for sure. I mean, whitetail gear list. I've got that dialed in over the years, from how I like my tree stands hung to the setup I shoot. But yeah, we can certainly do that.
Awesome. James, seriously, man, I appreciate it. Next time it's going to be during a kill, and we'll have a little sip of Elmer T. Lee.
Elmer T. Lee. That's the thing that really united us.
He's a
Elmer
good man.
T. Lee.
He's a good man.
What a guy. Anybody listening, you find a bottle of that stuff, you hit up Mike. You tell me where it's at.
We need to know.
Drive to get
We'll pay top dollar and we'll drive anywhere. Just let us know.
Exactly.
Elmer T. Lee. James, seriously, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Have a good one, Mike.
You too. Later, buddy.